All right, we're on Unit 4, Day 1 right now. So let's get that going. Get in here. So yesterday we talked about the beginning of inequalities, how to shade, how to graph them, how to write an interval notation. So today we're going to be solving a little bit and graphing and writing an interval notation. So we're just going to build on yesterday, and we're going to build on solving equations from last unit. So it's the same steps when we're solving equations. We just treat the inequality like an equal sign. One of the things that we did last unit was ask you if a number was a solution, and we had to substitute it and then evaluate. And that's what the beginning of these notes asks you to do. So it asks you this question up here: is 2 a solution to these inequalities? Well, a solution makes the inequality true. So if it makes it true, the answer is yes. If it doesn't make it true, then the answer is going to be no. So let's take a look at this first one. If we plug in the number 2 for x, we have to substitute it and then do what we talked about in Unit 2, which is evaluate. So we're going to actually simplify this down and see what we get. So we get 1 is less than or equal to 7. Is 1 less than or equal to 7? Either one? Yeah, 1 is less than 7. So as long as it's less than or equal to either one, because the word or is in there, then this answer is yes, 2 is a solution. So that's all we're looking for. There's a yes or no answer. So if we take a look at number 2, we would combine like terms. So that's 6x plus 11. And then we subtract the 11. We get 6x is greater than or equal to, I think that's negative 20 minus 11 is negative 31. Divide by 6. Oh, no. I forgot to plug in 2. My bad. Let's go back. All right, so if I plug in 2 right here, we get 12 plus 11 is greater than or equal to negative 20. 12 plus 11 is 23. Is 23 greater than or equal to negative 20? Well, that answer is yes as well. 23 is greater than a negative number. So that works as well. This last one is 2 a solution. We're going to plug in the number 2 in for x. So we get 7 is greater than 12 minus 5, which is 7 is greater than 7. Is that true? Is 7 greater than 7? No. If it had an equal to sign, we can say yes, but in this case, it doesn't have an equal to sign. So that is your answer. So that's the first couple questions in your homework. It's just plugging in a number, substituting in, and then evaluating and seeing if it makes the inequality true. So this next part is going to be solving now. Okay. So there are blank solutions, which is why we shade. So whenever you have shading, there's going to be an infinite number of solutions or many solutions. So either one we're going to accept is an answer, infinite or many. So when we're talking about inequalities, we're talking about shading, and shading just means that there's tons and tons of answers. So if you multiply or divide by a negative, this is the only difference between an equal sign solving and an inequality sign solving. So if you divide or multiply by a negative, you have to flip the inequality sign. So if it's a greater than sign, it should become a less than, and vice versa. So if you divide or multiply by a negative, you got to flip the inequality sign. So let's take a look at number 4. It says solve and graph. So if we're to solve for x, there's no number to plug in for it. So we're going to do what we did when there was an equal sign there. So let's add the 5 over, divide by 2, and now we get x is less than 8. So this is my answer. So now let's graph that. 8 is here. I put a circle. I got to decide if that circle is open or closed. I believe it's open because it doesn't have an equal sign, and it's shaded to the left forever. And we put a arrow at the end. So now my interval notation, I know that the arrow is at the left side, so that means it's going to negative infinity. And I see the 8 is an open circle, so that's an 8, and it's got a parentheses. So that would be my answer for number 4. Number 5, if I were to solve, we add 5 to both sides. I get negative 3x is less than 12. Divide by negative 3. And this is where, because we divided by a negative, we have to flip that sign. So it goes from a less than to a greater than. And then we get negative 4 in there. So now we go open circle because it doesn't have equal to. Greater than sign, and it's pointed to the right. So that's the way that we're going to shade. And then we have an arrow at the end. So now we have negative 4 comma to infinity, and they're both going to be parentheses because there's no equal sign or equal to sign underneath that inequality. So that's the gist of these notes. So let's go to page 2. Make it a little bit tougher now, these 6 problems. So we need to distribute first for number 6. So for number 6, that would give us a positive 6x minus 2. And then combining like terms would give us 6x plus 2. We subtract the 2. And we get 6x is greater than or equal to negative 18. Divide by 6. And we get x is greater than or equal to negative 3. So now we have a closed circle and negative 3. We are shading to the right because that's the way the direction the arrow is pointing is. And in interval notation, it goes negative 3 comma to infinity because it's shaded to the right. And then we just have to decide at that negative 3, because I know that all inequalities for infinity signs are always going to be parentheses. The sign for a closed circle is going to be a bracket, if you remember that from yesterday. So that's how we denote the difference between a closed circle and open circle, is a parenthesis for an open circle and a bracket for a closed circle. This next one, you'd subtract 2 over. You'd get 3. We can divide both sides by negative half. And when you divide by negative half, you got to flip that sign because you divided by a negative. 3 divided by negative half in your calculator, I believe, is negative 6. We always said when you graph these, you got to make sure the variable's in the left. So we're going to flip this one more time. So it's a double flip because we flipped it for the divide by a negative. Now we're going to flip it because the variable was on the wrong side. So now this becomes less than negative 6. So we go open, shade it to the left at negative 6. And then my interval notation, since it's shaded to the left forever, is negative infinity. It goes to negative 6, and it doesn't have a equal to, so it's a parenthesis as well. So that's 6 and 7. We have 4 more. Number 8, we would move all of my numbers to one side, all of my variables to the other side. So now we moved the numbers and the variables. So now we get 7x is greater than or equal to negative 14. We divide by 7 to get the variable by itself. And we get negative 2. We don't flip the sign there. I know there's a negative on top. We only flip the sign if there's a negative down below if we're dividing by a negative. So now we go to negative 2. We do a closed circle. That arrow is pointing to the right forever. And then it asks us for, it asks us for interval notation. So we go to negative 2. We go to infinity. And we do a closed circle. That's our answer for 8. 9's a tough one because it's got 2 distributing. So if we distribute this negative 1 that's out front, we would get negative 5x minus 3 plus 4. And this would give me negative 4x plus 24 minus 18. So we get negative 5x plus 1 and negative 4x plus 6. We would move all of my variables to the left, move all of my numbers to the right. We get negative 1x is less than 5. Divide by negative 1. And because we divided by a negative, we have to flip that sign again. And we get negative 5. So now we go to negative 5. It doesn't have an equal to underneath, so it's an open circle. The arrow is pointing to the right because we had to flip the sign because we divided by a negative 1. And that would be my graph. And then my interval notation for that, I know that I have negative 5 to start from my left to right, and it goes all the way to infinity. And then that would be 2 parentheses there on the left and the right. So that's my answer for number 9. Why don't you guys pause and try to do these last two and then come back when you guys are ready. All right, so hopefully you tried these. If you distribute properly, you get negative 3x plus 5. If you move all of your numbers to one side, the right side, and all of your variables to the left side, you're going to move that 2x to the left by doing the inverse. So you add it. So now we have negative 1x is less than or equal to 5. You divide by negative 1. Flip the sign. We go to negative 5. Close circle. Shaded to the right. So now that closed circle is a bracket, so it'd be negative 5 to infinity. The reason why it's positive infinity is because we shaded to the right. And my last one, all the numbers I'm going to move to the right, like usual. All the variables I'm going to move to the left. That way we're not flipping anything in the very end. We divide by 4 to get the variable by itself. So we get x is greater than negative 5. We don't flip the sign because we didn't divide by a negative. The negative was on top. So now we go negative 5. We have an open circle. The arrow is pointing to the right, so it's shaded to the right. And that's what it looks like for our graph. And then for interval notation, it's negative 5 with an open circle, so it's a parenthesis. And then we always put a parenthesis